What if a simple, anonymous note could unravel the life of a millionaire and lead him to everything he never knew he was missing? Ethan Harper stood at the window of his penthouse, gazing at the city below. The view was breathtaking, but his eyes were blank. Another day, another deal closed. He should have felt proud, but inside he felt nothing. He turned away, his expensive shoes clicking on the marble floor. A photo caught his eye, him shaking hands with the mayor. Ethan paused, trying to remember when it was taken. Last month? Last year? The days all blurred together. At work, Ethan moved through the office like a ghost. People nodded respectfully, but their eyes slid past him. He was Mr. Harper, the boss, not Ethan, a person. In a meeting, Ethan's voice rang out, confident and clear. "The Riverside project will be our biggest yet." His team clapped, but no one smiled. As people filed out, Ethan caught a snippet of conversation. "Ice cold, that one," someone muttered. "Yeah, but he gets results," another replied. Ethan pretended not to hear, but the words stung. Was that all he was? A machine that got results? That night, alone in his perfect apartment, Ethan tried to shake off the feeling. He was successful, respected. What more could he want? But as he lay in bed, sleep wouldn't come. The silence was deafening. Ethan reached for his phone, scrolling through contacts. Surely there was someone he could call, just to talk? The list was full of business associates. No friends. No family. Ethan put the phone down, a lump in his throat. When had he become so invisible? As dawn broke, Ethan made a decision. Something had to change. But what? And how? Little did he know, the answer was waiting for him at work. Ethan arrived at the office early, as usual. But today felt different. As he approached his desk, something caught his eye. A small, yellow sticky note stuck to his computer screen. Heart pounding, Ethan peeled it off. In neat handwriting, it read, "A kind word can change someone's entire day." Ethan blinked, reading it again. Who had left this? And why? He looked around, but the office was empty. Puzzled, he sat down, the note still in his hand. For the first time in years, Ethan felt a spark of something. Curiosity? Hope. As his team filed in, Ethan found himself really looking at them. Clara, his assistant, gave him a tentative smile. Usually, he'd nod and look away. But today, "Good morning, Clara," Ethan said, surprising himself. "How are you today?" Clara's eyes widened. I'm good, Mr. Harper. Thank you for asking." The warmth in her voice made Ethan pause. Had he ever asked her that before? As the day progressed, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about the note. Who left it? Why? And would there be more? That night, as Ethan left the office, he felt different. The city seemed brighter somehow. He even smiled at the doorman, who looked shocked but pleased. At home, Ethan found himself excited for tomorrow. For the first time in years, he wanted to know what the next day would bring. Little did he know, his journey was just beginning, and it would change everything. Ethan woke up earlier than usual, a strange feeling in his chest. Was it excitement? He shook his head, bemused. When was the last time he'd felt that? At the office, Ethan's eyes went straight to his desk. His heart sank. No note. Had yesterday been a one-time thing? But then, as he sat down, he saw it. Tucked under his keyboard, a small blue paper. With shaking hands, Ethan pulled it out. "The greatest gift you can give someone is your time." Ethan read it twice, then looked around. The office was filling up, but nobody seemed to be paying him any attention. Who could be leaving these? As he pondered, Clara knocked on his door. "Mr. Harper? Your 9 a.m. is here." Ethan nodded, then paused. "Clara, wait. Have you noticed anyone unusual around my office lately?" Clara blinked, surprised. "No, sir. Is something wrong?" No, Ethan said quickly. "Just curious." As Clara left, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling he was missing something. Or someone. Throughout the day, Ethan found himself watching his colleagues more closely. Mr. O'Malley, the janitor, whistling as he worked. Sam, the new intern, nervously fumbling with papers. Had these people always been here, right under his nose? That evening, as Ethan was leaving, he saw Sam struggling with a heavy box. Usually he'd walk right by. But today, "Need a hand?" Ethan asked. Sam's jaw dropped. Mr. Harper. Yes, thank you. As they carried the box together, Sam chatted nervously about the project he was working on. Ethan found himself actually listening, even asking questions. When they finished, Sam beamed. Thanks again, Mr. Harper. That was really kind of you. Kind. When was the last time someone had called him that? At home, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about the notes, about Sam's smile, about the way Clara had looked surprised when he asked how she was. Had he really become so disconnected? As he got ready for bed, a memory surfaced. His mother years ago telling him, "Ethan dear, success isn't just about what you achieve. It's about the lives you touch along the way." Ethan sat heavily on his bed. When had he forgotten that? He reached for his phone, scrolling to a number he hadn't called in years. His finger hovered over it. Should he? Before he could decide, the phone rang. An unknown number. Ethan answered, his heart racing. "Hello, Ethan? It's Nora, your sister." Ethan's breath caught. "Nora? Why are you calling?" There was a pause. "I found something, Ethan. Something Mom left for you. I think you need to see it." Ethan's mind whirled. First the notes, now this? What was happening? "Ethan." Nora's voice was uncertain. "Are you there?" Ethan took a deep breath. "Yes, I'm here. Tell me more." As Nora began to explain, Ethan realized his comfortable, predictable world was about to change. And for the first time in years, he was ready for it. What secrets would Nora's discovery reveal? And how would they connect to the mysterious notes? Ethan couldn't wait to find out. Ethan's hands shook as he opened the old journal. Nora sat beside him, her presence both comforting and strange after so many years apart. "Mom's handwriting," Ethan whispered, running his finger over the faded ink. Nora nodded. "Read it, Ethan." As Ethan read, his mother's words washed over him like a warm embrace. Pages filled with love, wisdom, and hope. And tucked between the pages, familiar notes. "The notes," Ethan gasped. "They're from Mom." Nora smiled sadly. "She wrote them before she died. For you, Ethan. To remind you of what really matters." Ethan's mind raced. If the notes were here, then who? Clara, he realized. She must have been leaving them. Nora squeezed his hand. Mom always said Clara was special. Looks like she was right. Ethan felt overwhelmed. All this time, he'd been surrounded by people who cared. How had he not seen it? Ethan stood before his team the next day at work, heart pounding. I owe you all an apology, he began. Confused looks turned to shock as Ethan opened up. He talked about feeling lost, about the notes, about realizing what truly mattered. "I want to do better," he finished. "For all of you. For us." The silence that followed felt endless. Then slowly, Clara stood up. "Thank you, Mr. Harper," she said softly. "That means a lot." Others nodded and some smiled. But as the meeting ended, Ethan overheard whispers. "Think he means it? Probably just a phase." Ethan's heart sank. Had he really been that bad? Determined, Ethan threw himself into changing. He asked about people's families, organized team lunches, and even started a community outreach program. But it wasn't easy. His attempts at small talk fell flat. His jokes met with awkward silence. And the community program? A disaster. One evening, after another failed attempt at connecting, Ethan slumped in his office. Maybe he couldn't change. Maybe it was too late. A knock at the door. "Clara, Mr. Harper?" I brought you some coffee." Ethan looked up, surprised. "Thank you, Clara. And please call me Ethan." Clara hesitated, then sat down. "Ethan, I want you to know. Those notes? Your mother's words? They helped me once, too. When I was struggling. That's why I started leaving them for you." Ethan stared at her, speechless. Clara continued, her voice gaining strength. "Change isn't easy, but it's worth it. Don't give up." As Clara left, Ethan felt a surge of determination. She was right. He couldn't give up now. That night, Ethan made a bold decision. He'd step away from the firm for a while, use the time to reconnect, to learn, to grow. But where would he go? What would he do? As he pondered, his eyes fell on an old flyer. The community center his mother used to support. Of course. Ethan picked up his phone, his heart lighter than it had been in years. It was time for a new chapter. What challenges and revelations await Ethan at the community center? And how will this decision change his life and the lives of those around him? Ethan stood before the community center, its faded sign a far cry from his sleek office building. He took a deep breath and pushed open the creaky door. Inside, chaos reigned. Kids ran around, their laughter echoing off the walls. Adults huddled in corners, deep in conversation. And in the middle of it all, an elderly man with kind eyes. "You must be Ethan," the man said, extending a paint-stained hand. "I'm Arthur. Welcome to our little madhouse." Ethan shook his hand, feeling out of place in his expensive suit. "I'm here to help," he said, trying to sound confident. Arthur's eyes twinkled. "Perfect. You can start by helping Tommy with his art project. He's the one covered in glitter." Before Ethan could protest, he found himself sitting at a tiny table, helping a giggling 6-year-old glue macaroni to paper. By day's end, Ethan was exhausted, covered in glue, and sporting a lopsided macaroni necklace. But for the first time in years, he felt alive. As the days passed, Ethan threw himself into center life. He fixed leaky pipes, tutored struggling students, and even attempted to teach a dance class, much to everyone's amusement. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Ethan's perfectionism clashed with the center's chaotic energy. His attempts to organize often fell flat, and his corporate jargon left many scratching their heads. One day, while helping repair a classroom, Ethan's frustration boiled over. "This is impossible," he snapped, throwing down his hammer. Arthur appeared beside him, calm as ever. "You know, Ethan," he said softly, "you can't build anything if you don't first tear down what's broken." Ethan blinked, the words sinking in. "What do you mean?" Arthur smiled. "Sometimes we need to let go of our old ways to make room for new growth. It's not about being perfect. It's about being present." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. Arthur's words echoed in his mind. What if he'd been approaching this all wrong? The next day, Ethan did something he'd never done before. He asked for help. "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted to the group during morning circle. "But I want to learn. From all of you." The silence that followed felt endless. Then slowly people began to share. Their struggles, their triumphs, their hopes. Ethan listened, really listened, for the first time in years. And as he did, something inside him began to shift. Weeks turned into months. Ethan's suits gave way to paint-stained jeans. His polished speeches became heartfelt conversations. And slowly, the walls he'd built around himself began to crumble. One evening, as Ethan was locking up, he noticed a new drawing on the wall. A bridge connecting two sides of a river. Underneath, in childish scrawl, "Thank you for helping us build this." Ethan's vision blurred with tears. He touched the drawing gently, realizing that the bridge wasn't just on paper. It was inside him, connecting the man he was to the man he was becoming. As he turned to leave, Ethan saw Arthur watching him, a knowing smile on his face. "Ready for tomorrow?" Arthur asked. Ethan nodded, a lump in his throat. More than ever, what final revelations await Ethan as his journey nears its end? And how will he bridge his old life with his new one? The story's conclusion promises to be both heartwarming and transformative. Ethan stood before the mirror, adjusting his tie. It felt strange to wear a suit again after months in jeans and t-shirts. Today, he was returning to his firm for the first time since his sabbatical. His phone buzzed. A text from Nora. "You've got this, big brother." Ethan smiled, warmth filling his chest. Their weekly dinners had become the highlight of his week. At the office, Ethan took a deep breath before stepping out of the elevator. The familiar hush fell over the room as he walked in, but this time it felt different. Clara was the first to approach. "Welcome back, Mr. Ethan," she said, smiling warmly. "Thanks, Clara," Ethan replied, his voice steady. "It's good to be back." As the day progressed, Ethan shared his experiences at the community center. He spoke of the challenges, the laughter, and the lessons learned. To his surprise, his team listened intently, asking questions and sharing their own stories. During the lunch break, Ethan overheard two interns talking. "Is this really the same Mr. Harper?" one whispered. "I know," the other replied. "He seems human." Ethan chuckled to himself. Human. That was a start. That afternoon, Ethan unveiled his new initiative, a a company-wide volunteer program partnering with local community centers. The room buzzed with excitement. "This isn't just about giving back," Ethan explained. "It's about growing together, as people and as a company." As the meeting ended, Ethan noticed something on his desk. A small, yellow sticky note, "Welcome back. We missed you." Ethan looked up, catching Clara's eye. She winked. Weeks flew by. The volunteer program took off, with employees coming back energized and more connected. Ethan found himself looking forward to work each day, eager to see what new bridges would be built. One evening, as Ethan was leaving the office, he bumped into Mr. O'Malley, the janitor. "Heading out, Mr. Harper?" O'Malley asked. "Yes, but please call me Ethan," he replied. Then, remembering Arthur's lessons, he added, "How are you doing, Mr. O'Malley?" The older man's eyes crinkled. "Just fine, Ethan. And please call me Joe." As they chatted, Ethan realized he'd worked alongside Joe for years without ever really seeing him. Never again, he vowed. The next weekend found Ethan back at the community center for the children's art exhibition. As he wandered through the colorful displays, he felt a tug on his sleeve. It was Tommy, now 7, grinning up at him. "Look, Mr. Ethan. I made this for you." Ethan knelt down, examining the drawing. It showed a group of stick figures holding hands, spanning a bridge. At the bottom, in wobbly letters, "Thank you for helping us build this." Tears pricked Ethan's eyes. "It's beautiful, Tommy. Thank you." As Ethan stood, he caught sight of his reflection in the window. The man looking back at him was different from the one who had first walked into this center months ago. His eyes were warmer, his smile genuine. He wasn't perfect, but he was present. Arthur appeared beside him. "So, Ethan," he said, his eyes twinkling, "was it worth tearing down those walls?" Ethan laughed, a full, hearty sound that surprised even him. "Every single brick," he replied. Later that night, Ethan sat in his apartment, Tommy's drawing propped up on his desk. He pulled out his mother's journal, flipping to the last page. There, in her familiar handwriting, was one final note. "Remember, my dear Ethan, life's greatest joy comes from the connections we make. Never stop building bridges." Ethan smiled, picking up a pen. At the bottom of the page, he added his own words. "I won't, Mom. I promise." As he closed the journal, Ethan felt a sense of peace wash over him. The invisible man was gone. In his place stood Ethan Harper, son, brother, friend, and bridge builder. And his story was just beginning. What new adventures and connections await Ethan in this next chapter of his life? The future is bright with possibilities, all because he dared to become visible again. If Ethan's journey from loneliness to connection inspired you, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button, subscribe to Life Narratives for more stories that touch the heart, and share this video with someone who might need a reminder that it's never too late to rebuild the bridges in their own life. Your support helps us bring more meaningful stories to life. Let's keep building this community together.